remember the days when someone could be wrong. I remember the days when thinking out loud won't get you shot down. I remember the ways we used to call out, hey, hey, hey. So don't forget to call on me to disagree. So don't forget to call on me to disagree. You now reduce them to the evil you once agreed. You now reduce them to be silenced you once agreed. So don't forget to call on me to disagree. So don't forget to call on me, yeah, to disagree. Your ship is sailing on. I see you on the horizon. Your ship is sailing on. I see you sailing on the horizon. Call on me when you wanna disagree. Please call on me when you wanna disagree. You now reduce them to be silenced you once agreed. You and I are predetermined nonsense, and that's okay. You and I have predetermined consequence, and that's okay. And that's okay. And
here. Okay, perfect. I will invite him up to speak. All right. So, hello, lovely listeners. Today we are talking about all things to do with goal setting. I'm your host, Masha. I am one of the broadcasters on the Pangburn Hangout channel. One of the only things we have in common as a collective is that we share our dedication to engaging in difficult conversations with the most serious dedication to open dialogue, and so we've been speaking with incredible guests. So today we have an amazing guest. His name is Chris Duffin. Many of you will already know him, but I'm going to read his entire biography for you so that you know who we're speaking with. Chris Duffin is an inventor, thought leader, and entrepreneur in health and fitness. He has co-founded the globally recognized brand Kabuki Strength, where he serves as chief visionary officer. Chris has invented multiple game-changing products, improving human biomechanics under load, as well as systematized approaches to assessing and correcting human movement dysfunctions. These tools and methods are used by nearly every top professional and collegiate team, penetrating over 90% of these markets alone. Chris is also the author of a powerfully inspirational and motivational best-selling book detailing his incredible upbringing, providing the reader guidance on introspection and goal setting. Chris is arguably one of the strongest pound-for-pound humans in the world, having been the only person to squat and deadlift over 1,000 pounds for reps, holding the Guinness World Record on the sumo deadlift. Having been a world record-holding powerlifter and #1 ranked lifter in the world for 8 years straight, Chris went on to perform numerous unduplicated feats of strength to raise money for charities and exhibition events. In addition to being one of the most respected strength coaches in the industry, he has an extensive track record of success in business. With an MBA in engineering in his background, he spent nearly 2 decades running or turning around manufacturing companies in aerospace, automotive, high tech, and heavy equipment fields. Now retired from competing, he is known for his industry-changing innovations and education in the strength and clinical worlds. He's a leading speaker on topics related to strength, human movement, rehab, mindset, goal setting, leadership, and motivation. His best-selling book, The Eagle and the Dragon, became the #1 Amazon bestseller in 5 categories, with hundreds of reviews ranking 5 stars for both the written and audio version. It is a memoir/life philosophy work. The book covers Chris's harrowing upbringing and self-actualization into one of the strongest people in the world. So, Chris, can you join us on screen? Are you able to unmute and have your camera on? I think we might be having some difficulties. It's spinning. Okay. How is everybody else? Maybe we will we will take a moment to talk about goal setting. How's
There.
that? Oh, hi! Yay! Welcome.
How you doing? Let me zoom out
Good.
here.
Good. I think I needed some extra time to fully introduce you because your bio is so impressive. So I think we're okay.
I appreciate the the introduction.
Well, I mean, it is pretty extraordinary, and I think when you're talking about an important topic like goal setting, or really any important topic, knowing who you're taking advice from is pretty important. So, I did want our listeners to know that you're someone that can speak authoritatively on the subject.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big proponent of like, obviously a lot of theory and research behind everything that I do, but you got to walk the walk. And there's a lot of people, kind of in those spaces that speak on those topics that, you know, maybe their success is just speaking on that topic. And I think that's one of the unique things that I've brought about is bringing that and displaying it in like 3 like very distinct major fields, both with myself as well as people I've, mentored in my company or personally is, taking things to world class level in either athletics, like career, business development, personally, interpersonally, or company wise, and as well as entrepreneurship. And that's not you don't see that often. And so I feel very confident in, the methodology and thought process that I employ and speak to.
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that attracts many of the people that I know and speak to on a daily basis to your work and to obsessively watching your YouTube videos, is that you bring a kind of like quantified aspect to it. There isn't a lot of like the mumbo jumbo, for lack of a better word, but it's very systematized, and that's why I think that the mad scientist of strength is a great is a great appellation. Would you talk to us a little bit about that before we get into the meat of our topic, which is goal setting today?
About
The
the
mad
background,
scientist of strength.
the mad scientist of strength. Yeah, it's not something I came up with. Actually, it was a gentleman named Stan Efferding, who's a world record holding athlete, and he's kind of a public figure, done Shark Tank and all sorts of million other things. But I went to help him with some back and shoulder issues one time. So flew down into Vegas where he's at, and he he's on camera all the time. So he just pops up, the camera's rolling, and he's like, "This is Chris Duffin, the mad scientist of strength," blah blah blah, and it just like it stuck. Like, and I'm like, you know what? I think that's gonna work because literally, okay, I do have awards for scientific innovation, and like it's not like sure, but it does represent because I do some off the wall stuff that people oftentimes when I bring things in, it's very new, it's very different, and can be. I hate the word, but it's just they're items that well it takes some people getting used to it. And then finally, I'll talk about the science behind it, and it's just like very different than everybody's thought about before, and it'll be like, oh, that actually really freaking works. And it can be wild things like, in the strength training field, I'm the first person that really brought about these concepts around thinking about the effects of breathing and bracing and the impact of spinal management in having the largest global impact. And it was just like everybody thought about like just crunch down or big belly, these really basic thoughts, and then foot and ankle mechanics. And it's literally changed the field. Like minimalist shoes like are getting used in running and have been for quite some time. But early on, I would get scoffed at for these ideas, and I'd present the research and it'd be like, look, here I am. I'm squatting and deadlifting more than anybody in the world, and I'm doing it barefoot. And I've taken athletes to that level here. It's not simply a matter of just being barefoot. Here's all the concepts around it. Or even something wacky like, hey, you can actually use a shot of alcohol before a major event to increase your performance. People are like, that's fucking no. Like, alcohol's so bad for you. And I'm like, yeah, it is freaking bad for you. Cut it out of your life. Like, it is bad. It has horrible effects on cortisol levels and all sorts of other hormones. But if you want to hit a record, big number, an ounce or two about 3 to 5 minutes before a big lift will have, and I talk through the physiology of it, and people will start to be like, oh, holy shit, that really does work. And so that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're certainly the reason that I deadlift and squat barefoot. Like I was squatting in lifters for like 10 years. I thought I had poor ankle mobility. I thought I needed it. I thought I had the wrong hips, too long femurs, etc., etc. And then yeah, I just had the right coach come into my life, and she really pushed me towards that and towards many of your reference materials, and now I'm getting like really starting to approach the stratosphere of some of my goals around my lifts. And I definitely credit many of your techniques to that. So,
And it's pretty crazy. When you start doing it, it actually will start impacting other people's lives. Like, I also deal with a lot of coaches that have been around the field a long time, and they're used to, oh, whatever the new flavor of the day is. And I'm like, these are fundamentally like very basic principles. They work with everything that you've taught and known, but just like try it. And so like maybe 10 years later, they'll come back, it's an older coachman. Oh my God, you were right. I'm spending all day in the gym, and I started in about a month in. It's like all my back pain and knee pain and just like aches of like, my daily just started disappearing. Yeah, it actually has an impact on the whole body in a positive way.
Yeah, yeah, and certainly breathwork, bracing, the idea of that core stabilization, and the way that it's executed. Do you find that making some of those that like different approaches work for different folks? Like when you're referring to studies, for example, like is that necessary? Does that speak to a certain segment of the population? Like all of that sort of thing, I'd like to just kind of explore a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So it it really speaks to human physiology as a whole. And so my playground of just like expressing my values and where I set my goals has been in the realm of lifting a lot of weights, right? And but so people think it's exclusive to that, and it's not. Like, we do our education for a lot of the coaches, like the coaches, throughout like Major League Baseball. We're actually doing education for the Professional Baseball Strength Coaches Association, right? And the teams individually, and so it's really comes down to anyone that uses their body against load, right? And that should be everyone. I'm not saying everyone should go be a weightlifter by any means, but we should all have some sort of physical expression against some sort of demand in our life. If we don't, we're not building, bones, muscle, things that are going to improve our quality of life. And so, as well as the length of our life. And I have a lot of people that I work with in the clinical space, a lot of people that we educate in that space. And it's like the same exact processes that you're being taught about to your coach, the same exact processes that we're teaching somebody to get a 900-pound deadlift is the same exact thing the clinician will use with the 70-year-old grandmother that comes in with back pain at an 8 to 10 and is talking about how this is so devastating for them, not just the pain, but they can't hold their grandchild because of that. And then in that same session, employing these tactics, teaching, that and getting them down to like a 2 or a 0 and having them cry because they realize, oh my God, I'm going to be able to, take and care for that child for a couple hours. Well, and I couldn't have done that before. Right. So at the end of the day, if we look at things, for me, it's always comes down to a very holistic approach. But uh, but I like to test things in the extreme because I think that's where we learn at is finding those limits and finding ways where we're pushing that puts me in a space of rapid learning. Like I can learn in the matter of months what may take me years because I'm on this like writing edge of living or dying, let's say, right? And so minor subtle changes that may take quite a bit of time, you can elicit the effects really fast and see the difference. And so it teaches me a lot when I choose to be in those spaces, which I don't live in that space a lot of the time, or you're going to end up with some issues. So
Or like you're talking about Goggins and those, I often wonder how people continually push like that.
yeah, and I struggle with that. I know people love Goggins. I've got a lot of people that are associated with him, and there's a lot of core fundamentals of his messages that are great. But I really, really struggle with that thought process of really putting yourself in that space in the fact of damaging your body. You don't have to do that. You can push the limits of exploring what your potential is and living on that edge, learning from that, stepping back, and managing that in a tempered process. Uh, so that, I mean, it should be additive to your life, right? We should challenge, of course, the mind, the spirit, the things, and learn in ourselves. But I shouldn't be fucking going until, I've got trauma to the bones. And like, it's just like, I really do struggle with that component of Goggins's message. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying anything bad as a whole, but I don't like to see that, honestly.
No, same, and I think that it's a form of like it's taking the argument, like it's a maximalist argument, right? Like, yes, we can do this, but for me as a woman, and for my friends and those around me, my question would be why, like
I,
I.
I think that there's some other deeper, if you need to be there in that space, there's definitely some deeper things that you probably need to address. And so for me, I think about this in mind, body, spirit, right? The three legs to a stool. And if you're pushing so hard to achieve success in these other areas and not addressing one of those, you're going to get to a point that you fall over and fall off that stool in your life. It might be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, but how often do you see this from a high powered business executive that's like pushing certain size and not taking care of the other? And then all of a sudden, falls into alcohol or drug addiction, loses their life, like all of a sudden, there's so many things on, all those areas. And it is a vast important, I think, that you're addressing all three of those. And anytime you're pushing too far in one or two of those without the others, it's going to end up coming around and you're going to have to pay the piper at some point in time. And
Mhm.
that's going to be an unpleasant experience, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. Now, I
Yeah.
do think that there's extreme value in the extremes. And literally, I have kind of lessons around that and how you can employ that. But I call it finding balance literally through extremes. So it's taking these things that are the extremes on both people would think are diametrically opposed, right? So I want to see the absolute perfect squat, right? And people are like, oh, I got to start with my body weight. I got to do the bar. I got to like, there's absolutely like it, finding that and I say, no, I want the absolute perfection. I want now you to put every last drop, every ounce, every piece of your soul, and then more than you thought into that, right? Form's out the window, technique doesn't matter. And it's like, no, I want both. And it's like, well, you can't. Yes, you can, right? Because how are you going to find where you're actually breaking down at, where you're actually doing the things that you say that you're doing or not? Just like, I dive into this with dynamic neuromuscular stabilization. A lot of the professors incredible at teaching these concepts. And I'm like, but you're not doing it. And they're like, well, yeah, I am. I'm like, no, you don't know it. Like, let's put you under some real load and find out. And you'll find these minute, subtle things about yourself and about your movement that you're not really putting together the way that you think that you are. You cannot find those opportunities without stressing the system. And that's what Goggins is doing, right?
Yeah.
But we should also be seeking in that sign. How do I do that? The other direction as well. So my squat example is like, how do you actually push yourself as hard as possible? How do you see like what that max load is and putting your soul into it? If you've got energy leaks, if you've got loss in the system, if you've got like, you're not showing what you're fully capable of. You're not expressing that because you're being held back by, and so you seeking these extremes in nature, the diametric opposition can find something of beauty like in the middle, right? And so squat's an easy example, but take work-life balance or so many other things, and it'll be fucking hard, but it's going to teach you that. Now, what's interesting is I think with this philosophy is you also, if you chase some of those extremes and like really chase them, it forces you to cut out the things maybe in life around you that are not as much value. It forces you indirectly to face the things and paring away and the lessening and refining and distilling down to what are the core things that you truly love and value. And so it's an indirect way because sometimes it is really hard to go in and just like consciously try to process like, what are my values? All right, because I got to start with that before I start setting goals. And it's like, then you think you have it, but there's ways that you can test that or bring those about for people that don't want to walk through that, kind of meditative or that level of introspective process to get there, which I think that there's a lot of tools to do that, but this is another way. But also, so it's something distinctly different. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody talking about that concept in the way that I have before, and it's it works. It's really challenging to truly chase, but man, it can leave you a life, in my opinion, that is one filled with, I call it purpose and passion. And
Mhm.
that's where a lot of like my framework around mindset and the personal perspective of growth as a human being and how I challenge people is to do that, to create something so that when you get to a point of, wow, I'm coming to the end of in terms of dealing with like I'm on my deathbed, or the scope of, assessing something in that manner, where people often face major regrets, not about
Mhm.
what they did and what they failed at in life. What they're going to focus on is the things that they didn't do.
Mhm. And therefore don't know about themselves, like, don't know their true limitations potentially, and don't know
And it's
what
just like,
could have been, and
yeah, what did I do with my life? There's so
yeah,
many of these things I wanted to go do, and I just didn't do them.
yeah.
And wow, it's, so it's anyway, I'm kind of getting
No,
out there a little bit, but it's valuable conversation.
no, it's great. Definitely. I just wanna say I really like your shirt. I'm a big proponent of that concept, of anti-fragile, things being made, better, stronger, et cetera, through by trauma, by stress, by insult. And, I think that's a very important concept that people maybe aren't being exposed to. I think a lot of people, it seems like this culture, which, is one that's alien to me. I grew up in the Balkans and Central Europe and so forth, and sort of like the modern American culture seems very focused on how am I small, how am I injured, how am I not capable, how am I do you know what I mean? So, and I think that people hear about that more, hear about that way of being, about being triggered, about being traumatized, about minimizing exposure to triggers, rather than focusing on not just resiliency but also anti-fragility. So maybe
Yeah,
there's a quick bit before we get into the actual topic of our
yeah.
conversation, if you want to say something about that.
Yes, I do want to say something on that before we dive into to the conversation. So, if you doubt what, if anyone doubts what she's saying here, start walking around and ask people who they are, and you will very quickly find a story of, I'm the person with a bad back that is going to live this way. I'm the person that's this way because I have alcoholic parents that raised me. I am like, everybody's got these stories about the environment or things that, that they live with, and that is the definition of who they are. So again, getting outside of, the verbiage that is really, I think, used quite a bit in some circles around uh, damn it, I'm slow with words today. uh, 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 Gosh darn it. People that want to come up with these, whoever's the worst case scenario. Like, I've had the most problematic, so I've got the win. I've had the most trauma. I've got the
Right,
most
right.
triggering, and I know there's a common word that's really runs around that.
Oppression Olympics. If you don't want to use it, I will.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so and we really need to shift that mindset, because that is really limiting, very limiting, and we need to be focused on what is our actions and responses to those things, because our choices and the way that we choose to live, despite the shit that fucking happens to all of us, life is fucking hard. You fail because shit comes out of nowhere and fucks things up. Like, that's the reality of it, right? And but how we respond to it is who we are, not those things happening. So, like, for me, the elevator pitch on my life, I'll do it right now, right? Because oftentimes people like, I've heard the stories, like, I was like 15. I didn't really expose my personal life a long time ago. And so it took a lot to write my book and other things and get that out there. But, in the business world, I was growing companies, and I had the gym on the side. I was coaching athletes, and, people would always be like telling me like, their sob story, why they couldn't, like, oh, you don't know what it's like to deal with blah, blah, blah. I've got kids. Oh, I've got a hard job. And anyway, so you hear this stuff, all the time, and that's the reality of it. And we need to define our goals based on what we can accomplish. But my background, and why I don't throw this in people's faces by any means, but I grew up homeless in the wilderness, living in tents, living in tree forts. I was taken from my family along with my siblings, and we were bought and fucking sold. And we had this is bad fucking shit. I've dealt with serial killers, human trafficking, murders. Like, it's some wacky shit. You can read my autobiography, and I don't tell the bad. I tell the stories that allow me to share the framework of like the things that I want to believe. And anybody that doubts me, go watch a documentary called Murder Mountain. I lived 50 miles deeper and more remote than that. And it'll just like, that will blow your mind. Like, oh, the corrupt police and the serial killers and the human, like, and people running around with freaking machine guns around. Like, yeah, people disappearing left and right. Yes, that's what I grew up in. And a lot of alcohol abuse and drug abuse in the home, and just a very traumatic experience. And I chose not to be that. And I chose to try to leverage from that, being a stronger person, being able to take on the things and show what I'm capable of, and to be able to purposely choose the life that I want to create and live, and purposely choosing who I want to be. And what I did is I took custody of my 3 younger sisters while I was putting myself through school for a dual engineering program, continued to do that while I got my MBA, chased my career, and become like a lot of things that I've done in life. And then, building something amazing out of it, and then switching gears because it wasn't truly aligned what I felt I really could do in this world to help positively impact people. And I dropped all of that, threw everything on the line that I'd earned and worked for the last 20 years to go another direction. So that's the elevator pitch side of that. I do have lots of sympathy and empathy for people in all sorts of positions, but I also do know what it's like to be hard.
Yeah, yeah, and I got your book on audio, and I have to say that there's a lot there. I really recommend it for people. It's very accessible, it's very engaging, and there isn't I think that you do a great job of rooting yourself in your history, and basically offering up the best aspects of that as instructional for those of us who are looking to do big things in our lives, and to know ourselves truly and deeply. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that. I know that there can be there can be a sense of like vulnerability to that, perhaps. I'm not sure. I know that I felt for you at the time that I was listening to your audiobook, like, oh, I don't know if this world, like, like, deserves people's authentic self in that way. But all kudos and congratulations to you for getting it out there.
Thanks. It was a challenging, right? Because it's like, how do you express this stuff and hope? And I didn't know until I actually got it out there that it doesn't come across as a woe is me, or look how great I am, or any of this stuff, because that wasn't my desire. My desire was to, use what I've learned under a very unique, what I call scope of life, going from there to here, dropping all that and going someplace else completely new yet again, and sharing those lessons that being in that type of scope has allowed me to learn. And so it was really rewarding to go, when it came out, to see like, okay, that is what I hope to have happen is happening, because it's a fine line, right? And you never know how people are really going to take,
You have a work out there that I think that its intention is very clear, and it is to help people. And so what, people are going to do all kinds of different things with it, but I think that the intention is very, very obvious and clear. that I wanted to get to, and that anti-fragility is such a good metaphor for, that muscular development, and like physical development is such a good metaphor for anti-fragility, is what I meant to say. And in my culture, there's this sort of like thing of like begin as you mean to go on as well, which ties into the way that you approach the bar when there's very little or no weight on it. You do the same kind of rep as you would if it's your top set. Now that also applies for me to coming into the new year. It's like a fresh start. It's like a clean slate. And in the US, the top three New Year's resolutions rather are vowing to exercise more, eat healthier, and lose weight. So to me, to get into intentional and effective goal setting, which is the topic of our conversation today, those three seem a little bit non-specific and nebulous. So can we talk about how you would go about setting those goals?
Yeah. So you might hear some things that are a little different, and then I'd like to do what you do with the goals to actually execute it, because I think that is a bigger and larger discussion. So I don't think the setting of the goals as much of a discussion as what is prior to setting the goals and then after setting the goals. So prior to setting the goals, or as you set them, the things that pop to your head going, this is what I want to accomplish. Let's say one of those was, we use weight loss as the example in this one. It's a very kind of easy one to grasp. It's very common. And yeah, why do I want to lose weight? Right? Well, I want to get to 190 pounds because that was the weight I was in high school. I want to get back to, my before pregnancy body. I want to, what are the drivers behind, like, people will set like this very specific like number for a weight goal. This is where I want to go. Well, why? It is really important to ask that question, because it's really easy in setting goals where you can get the exact opposite of what you want. Okay. Let's say you spend a bunch of great time and you're dealing with these, like, I want to get to 100 pounds because I'm 270 pounds. I don't know if I'm going to be there for my kids when they're later. I want to be able to play with them. I don't have the energy. I don't have the physicality, so on. It's like, I'm going to get down to X amount of weight. Well, if I set that target too low because of that, and I don't realize what it's going to take to get there, and my goal is to be more there for my family as an end result of that, which is very commendable, you're going to have to do some things with your lifestyle that are extremely disciplined. If you're going to have to go to a full bodybuilder like prep, approach to lose 70 pounds over 6 months or something. And it's going to be a big takeaway from those things. Right. And so, yeah, it's really important to understand like these deeper runs. And so sometimes these cosmetic things or physical things that we want to see in life. I think in my book, I use the fancy house and the nice cars and whatever that the hustle porn people like always throw at you to go after it. That's what you really want. Why? It could be different things for different people. It could be security, knowing that you've made it. It could be sense of accomplishment. It could be many, many things. And so all these are now words that they are nebulous. They don't have an end goal, but they're a way of living and being. They're a thing that you can never really truly like own. But if the same exact goal set in the wrong direction can lead you away from that. And so we want to spend time and use the things that come at you to help better understand what that value set, because your goals are an expression of what your values are, the way that you want to live. And sometimes those things can get taken from you. For me, I was faced with, I wanted to be the all-time greatest powerlifter ever, all-time record at the hardest weight class with the best number per weight class, if you ran the math. And I was chasing that. And I had faced, substantial abuse to my arm since childhood. Didn't know that I didn't feel pain, in a lot of areas. And actually I just had second surgery on it again. by the best elbow surgeon in the nation. And it's the most challenging. He's never seen anything like my elbow. And he's like, you are a unique person. But I was faced with this fact that like, I can never really express truly like my potential. What does that mean for me? Well, that's an area that I express my desire to be competitive. To express my desire to seek recognition for a job well done. It's my desire to push the limits so that it puts me in a state that I'm forced to learn. It's, it's all these sorts of things, but some things it's missing too. It's like one of the areas I love creative expression, like in different ways. And what does it mean? And I'm like, and so I ended up going another path. Well, that path, I did some things that have never been duplicated. I don't want to brag. Don't need to mention, like, there's a documentary movie coming out on it. Like and it's the things that and I walked away from that, being number one in the world for 8 years straight, trying to, chase and back and forth with world records with other individuals. And I went, I'm done. There's different ways. Heck, what would happen if I got, turned into a paraplegic or something like that? Well, the world's not over. There's other ways, if I understand those values, to go, oh, this is where I'm going to go, right? I can express those values in a whole different perspective that doesn't even involve lifting weights. And that is really important because, again, people's goals, let's take, people whose lives become certain goals. I want to be the best football player, and they're chasing this. And then you get to the end of your career and nothing bad happens. You get all the way there. And some people really face big crises because that became what defined them. Those goals became what defined them. And then they lost themselves when it was no longer chased. Go ahead and look at the numbers as it relates to suicide, depression, alcohol, so on, with people that we're talking about in that group. Does it happen to all of them? No, massively higher than the normal population. Okay. So that's the before goals. And people can dive when it comes to setting the goals, like, the smart, smart goals, or whatever. But that is the important thing. Now, what's interesting is when we get to take the same weight loss goal. So now we've said, you know what? Goddamn. Yeah. Going from 260 to 190, dropping 70 pounds in 6 months. That's not going to deliver the life that I want. Right. And that is kind of my end goal. So I temper that back. All right. We're going to drop down to 220 during that period of time. All right. Now we need to pick a plan. Now we're going to dive into some really meaty stuff. Okay. So people are constantly trying to find the best approach, the best strategy. And it could be the best strategy for your business, the best way to gain muscle, hit whatever goals. Like, people are always looking for that shortcut, that magic pill. What is the magic pill for weight loss? I want to do that. Like, I'm going to research and try all these different things that's being offered out there and find, those don't do anything. So you walk through that whole process. But the important lesson there is that it's not the strategy. Pick one. Pick your best. Pick something that fits your lifestyle. So in the fact of dieting, like, look at, the many different approaches and go, okay, none are better than the other necessarily. Even if one may deliver more than the other, I'm going to go through and go, what can I adhere to the best? I'm going to talk about why that's important here in a minute when it comes to measuring things. What can I adhere to? Because what I really want is, again, it's a way of living. That's what it should be, right? So to be effective for diet, it needs to be a lifestyle. It's not a 6-month plan or a 3-month plan. It's, what can I do for 3 years, 6 years, so on, right? And so now we've picked a method, right? And we're jumping on the scale every day. And one day it's up 5 pounds. Oh, shit. I got to try something different, right? And so we actually need to not stop measuring, but it comes to it's called the rhythm of how we measure. So this is one rhythm of how we measure. And then it's measuring the process becomes more important than measuring the result for most of the majority of the time. All right. So let's say I decide to go ahead. Can't say that weighing yourself every day is a good idea for most people because it's going to keep sending these signals to you, right? I do that. That's just my practice. I'm a very habitual person. I don't have it recorded anymore, but I have like 20 years of like my daily weight recorded in a spreadsheet. Like, and what I did is I didn't look at it. I just popped it in, popped it in, popped it in. Okay. And that would then, if I decided to analyze something, I would look at that on a weekly basis. So that would give me a more accurate measure of like this week versus last week. So all you really need is a weekly check-in if you're in this process. But daily, you need to measure what is my adherence to my plan. So 80% of your focus on measurables needs to be not the thing that you're trying to achieve, but how well you're performing on your action plan, your process to achieve that goal. And then to find those gaps. So that now becomes an investigative process to dive deeper into understanding what is getting me off track. Because my discipline and adherence to following a plan is the most important thing for any goal, no matter what it is. So you're walking through and it's like, okay, this is my plan. I'm supposed to be eating this way or whatever. And it's like, 3 days it didn't do whatever it was, my pre-workout nutrition, or I don't, whatever the fuck it was, excuse my language, right? Doesn't matter. Why? Why did I not do those things? Now, okay, I did that because I had, late afternoon meetings get scheduled, several times this week, and just cut in the way of whatever it was. I had kids up late that made me, not able to prepare my food. So I had to eat out during the day. That my intent, that was my goal to adhere to this plan, was simply to, have prepared meals and eat a little cleaner instead of, taking takeout or whatever it is. Okay. Is there anything I can change in my life to change that? Because one, it appears that is happening and my plan didn't address that. So I need to, you know what? That is going to happen. If I want to do that, I should prepare all my meals on a Sunday, cook everything up for the week, or a subset, have those available for when those days happen. If I'm constantly getting the afternoon meeting and whatever that's affecting, like, you know what? I need to put some things in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Maybe I missed my workouts because I had these late meetings constantly. And it's like, well, I didn't set the expectations. I didn't block my schedule. I didn't, there's a way around this, or it's going to continue. How do I adjust? So that's your most important thing in this rhythm of review, is measuring the process, making changes to the process. Then we get into, okay, a weekly. All right. Now I can see, so, in this case, I'm actually checking my weight or looking at the average of the weight or whatever. Right. So this is a more, this is checking the actual results to the plan. And that's where you would make minor revisions to the plan. Okay. So we're not changing the plan. We're not trying to find the next secret, but we're going, what is a minor little subtle change I can make to get better in tune with that? And we're still not looking at, is it the right plan? Is there a better business strategy, better plan to grow my business because it's not growing at the right rate, or cutting costs, or whatever it is? Right? Now, on a 6-month time frame, now you might be spending some time to go, all right, let's review. Let me think about going, or take the time to, maybe you've been journaling, thinking about, but you're not taking action. And you get to the point of like, okay, now it's time for me to review. Is what I thought the right plan to fit my lifestyle, to fit, is it appropriate, or do I need to change the strategy a little bit? And again, minor changes over larger changes, but this is when you actually start thinking about that. And so this is what I call the rhythm, right? So you got to figure out how to get in the rhythm of what you think about and what action you're taking. So I think these concepts are definitely a lot different than most people do that. Now, you will see that in a lot of effective business strategy type things, but think about that on your personal life as well. And you're going to find that you start delivering a lot more to yourself in many, many ways. Because what I find is that we fill our lives with things that make us feel like we're accomplishing something. And it's checking boxes, it's getting shit done. But the biggest thing is not like how much you get done, how well you manage your time. It becomes how much can you pare away and distill again? Like, I have so many, anybody that follows me on social media, they're like, how the fuck do you even sleep? I'm like, yeah, actually, I average 9 hours a night. I track it. And, 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 and I do get a lot of shit done, but I've pared away so many things non-essential to the way I want to live and who I want to be. And so anyway, I'm a little bit of a tangent here. So maybe I should pause for some questions on the importance of understanding and spending time looking at your values first. So, and then from your values, you establish goals that are going to be expressions of that and help you have a life that realizes it. You pick a plan, and now 80% of your plan, or 80% of your time reviewing, is not the goal. It's my adherence to whatever approach I'm taking. And then you've got a rhythm of intermittent reviews to refine that plan, minor adjustments, and you're using your adherence to guide better understanding your life and variables within it to accomplish and stay disciplined. And then 6 months, 12 months, we're looking at, all right, it's time I can evaluate maybe a different plan. Maybe I want to try a different diet method and see how that works. Okay. I achieved success. Yeah. Do I want to stay with it? Or, hey, maybe it's time to try something a little different and then find out and then do the same process again. Right.
Yeah, there's a lot there. You said so much, and I think that there's like any one of those parts we could kind of drill down and get more into it. I think one of the things that I have found really helpful is the idea of the quantified self. Like I'm journaling. Yes, I'm keeping track of my subjective experience of what's happening with me, but also I have targets. Like I wear a Garmin. I have targets for what my resting heart rate is. I try to manage cortisol and stress and recovery. I do weigh myself, but again, as a female, that's kind of fraught in other ways, and
That's
sort
a
of
whole
like
topic, and not something like the weight management one is kind of interesting because, again, body weight doesn't necessarily tell, like, I just thought, because it's a really easy one and it is the most common, despite the
for
fact that is
sure.
maybe not the best thing to look at. So
Yeah, and then literally measuring like waist, etc., like parts of the body, because if you're going through a recomp process, again, the scale isn't telling you. Like
mm-hmm.
it's also measuring what, like really zeroing in on measuring the thing that you're actually trying to achieve, not right. Like the
Yeah.
scale weight is a fraught thing. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of emotion involved there, and I think that quantifying as many aspects of it as possible is helpful. And yeah, I think that we're clearly in agreement about that. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
but maybe not getting. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
say that is a major shift for a lot of people to think about not actually measuring the goal being is important, right? Versus measuring what is my process. And sometimes people don't have a process, and that's a problem right there, right? How are you going to get there to begin with? So I get like my big uh, pet peeve is like bucket lists and like these, like, I got to create all these freaking goals. Like, why? Like, where are you trying to go with that? And so it's really vastly important to tie your goals into it. Okay, here's my values. All right, what are goals in my personal life, my relationship with my wife, my kids? How does that tie to that? How does my career, my job tie into that? How does my financial situation? And so you start creating all these goals with this value over here. All right. Okay. And that's, that's the thing that's really going to create some alignment in your life, and you might start seeing where things overlap and you can spend some more time. And that's what I saw when I made a dramatic shift. So this is, the second half of my book, on the eagle and the dragon, is this purposeful, reinvention of oneself. And that is, looking at like, what is the most value proposition I can bring into the world? And yeah, I was seeing some of that with what I did with my work, but I had a second job basically to do some of the others, right? And then that was taking away from time with my family. And it's like, how can I pull this together? How do I, and I ended up realizing I needed to walk away from my career, my family, my hobbies even, were more important than my job. And it became, okay, if I can create a community that draws the like-minded people into that, if I can create my job that is literally become my part of my lifting becomes part of the marketing, part of the testing for the development, how is like me trying to push that further, then becomes the creative energy and outlet that I was using my hobbies for, and bring that in yet again. And at the end of the day, I ended up creating a space where, I went from being a high level executive who owned a gym, who was competing on a world class level and trying to build like, off road vehicles on the weekend, and, two kids that are getting a little older, to having three kids, a new wife, which is tied to that. We don't need to get into that. We can.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
But I have probably 4 hours a day more with my family, yet I'm pushing and working and achieving 10, 20 fold over what I did before and the impact in the world, right? I'm working, and that's what I talk about, the work-life balance, the dichotomy of extremes. But that's where the spending the time with those values prior to your goals, and then understanding those expressions, can help take your life and completely like upend what you're able to live and realize and do in the world. So again, kind of tangentially, but not. And I just want to talk about that for the power of that.
Masha, if I may.
Yeah, I agree. We've been joined by Travis.
Oh,
I'm wondering if he has a question.
Yes, sorry. I wanted to, Chris, thank you so much for being here, by the way. It's been very inspirational listening to you. I already feel myself wanting to eat healthier and exercise more. But I share in this idea of, a lot of people, including myself, setting unrealistic goals. And I want to ask you straight up, what is the formula from going from the unrealistic goal to, a goal that is achievable, but doesn't feel as though you're being so easy on yourself? Because sometimes I will set a goal and I'll be like, come on, man, you could do, you could do better than that. And of course we can look at the basic idea of like, someone will be like, I'm going to lose, my New Year's resolution is to lose 50 pounds this year. And then people are like, 50 pounds? Bullshit. You won't lose 1 pound. And, and then I'll say to myself, I'm going to cut 5 pounds in a month here. And I'm going to, run as much as I can, and I still play hockey and stuff. But, how do we get to realism in all of this? From going from this, like, it's like someone's going to have a list of 50 goals or no goals. How can we find that realism?
All right. So I think if you reflect on what I've said so far, there's a lot of things that dive directly into that, but I'm going to go someplace a little different to see if that provides some value, right? So let's keep this fucking crazy, unrealistic goal there, right? And we're not going to tell anybody about it. It's you. Maybe a close friend, whatever it is. But you keep that close to your chest. But you look at going, okay, if I'm going to tackle that, I need to develop to a level that I can. And so now we need to look at the basic, process for growth as a human in any of these aspects. For me, again, the mind, body, spirit, MBS would, that's like the fundamental approach that I take to like strengthening. What do I need to strengthen to get there? And so we want to take micro steps to build our confidence and our capacity to be able to do those sorts of things. Like my capacity to get, if I want to have this crazy, again, weight loss, not a great goal, but we'll just use that as an example. I want to do this thing, and it's going to take the, adhering to a diet to the level of like what a comp bodybuilder is doing to step on stage. You can't jump into that. You have to develop the capacity to do that. So how do you do that? Well, if we understand the cycle, and I call it the 6 Ps. All right. So looks a little bit like a square root. Okay. You're at one low point and you want to be way up here at the high point, on that symbol. And to do that, you gotta to grow, you have to step into the unknown. You have to challenge yourself. So we're not going to go from ground zero to that. We know we don't have the capability. I don't have the capacity. I don't have that. I need to develop that capacity. I need to have some smaller wins. So I'm going to need to tackle some smaller goals. So what do? I do take on something that's scary, but just a little scary. I walk up to the edge and go, that's I need to take this leap. I don't know exactly. It needs to be scary enough. Like, I don't know if maybe I'm going to be able to pull this off or not, or how challenging that's going to be. It needs to push you. And I call this, so this is that first step. So it is being right there on the precipice of that edge. Okay. So you get to the point, and that takes some readiness, like, fuck, I don't know if I'm gonna do it. And you take the leap. All right. So you need to develop the strength to be able to take that leap. You need to be able to do that. And so jump off the precipice. And as you're falling in fucking free fall, like, oh shit, what did I just do? Holy shit. Okay. I'm in. And that's the plunge. And during the plunge, you need to spend some time and experience the feelings, the emotions, the things that are rolling through you, because it may not necessarily, have an impact on this cycle, although it probably will, because it's going to help you calibrate actually what this experience is like versus what you thought it was going to be like. But, take those and roll those into your value discussion, because as you're doing it, there could be some things that come up and you're like, why am I feeling this way? And spend some time with that, right? Live into that and understand, like, oh shit, I wanted to be an author. So, but I was scared to, have people criticize me if I put something out there. So, I started putting some stuff out on social media or blogs, and, oh, it's scary. Oh, there's some bad comments. How do I feel about that? Those coming in. And then you get into your full tier. You're in it. And you're like, oh, fuck, I'm here. I'm working. I'm trying to lose this weight, and this is fucking hard. I feel overwhelmed. I don't know how I'm going to make this through. I just don't know. And that's a 3-step process in itself, right? So one of those is just spending some time and going, oh, let me acknowledge, I'm here. I'm at the pit. I'm in the pit. I jumped off the precipice. I took the plunge, and I'm sitting here in the fucking pit, right? And all right, okay. That's how I'm at. Step 1, acknowledge it. Step 2, understand. Okay, well, that puts me at a point that I feel this way. I feel overwhelmed. I feel whatever those emotions are, because this is important to me, and I actually want to be successful. So it's going to bring out the best in me, right? And now we move that into celebration. Oh my God, this is going to be one of those fucking moments I think back on. Maybe I tell the grandkids on if it's really big. It's like, this is the moment that I'm going to come out of, and it's fucking gnarly, and I'm overwhelmed. But these are one that getting to the other side of this. Holy shit, I'm going to be fucking proud, and I'm going to know, that I'll be able to do some more. And then you start climbing. So that's the pull. And that is literally pulling yourself up out of this pit. And then from that, within the pull, you have to use a lot of tools. And so I've got whole toolkits that I teach around both the strategic side, which we just dove into, and around process management on the strategic level and other stuff, but there's the whole human behavior, and that's human behavior internally, self-awareness, human behavior as it relates to interpersonal, like working relationships or managing relationships and conflict resolution, all these sorts of things, right? So you got to, use those tools to then pull out. And you actually may be using microcycles of this tool, which is what I'm talking about here, to develop the strength. Because here it's like, I want to develop the skill and ability to manage the discipline for my diet structure, for example, to this freaking high level. And so I'm doing micro piece of this because this is the development cycle. This is the development cycle. My thoughts. This is my thoughts on the human development cycle. But and we climb, we pull ourselves out, and now we're at the peak. We have now levered. We're stronger. Guess what? I just trained for 3 months. Put me in a peak. Some of those days I was weaker than others as the, fatigue built up. And as I get through that, boom, I'm stronger. That's why I said it's my thoughts, but it is basic human physiology and physiology, essentially for, I believe, every living thing. You've got to have some resistance. So we have to take that leap to gain the resistance. And so we get there and then we start plateauing off. And now we can't ride that plateau too long before we go, okay, it's going to start declining if I don't have new challenge at some point. So now it's time to take the next. And the next one can be bigger because I've now enhanced my capacity to be able to handle more, understand or use that tool, whatever it is, to a deeper level. And so this is my own framework that I use and teach, but it's the 6 Ps. And then I tie that to, again, what I was talking about, mind, body, spirit. Like if you're pushing one thing too hard in your life, as far as like, we use the Goggins example, or I use the high-powered executive example where you're pushing physicality or your mind or whatever it is too hard, and not like, you want 3, imagine a stone is rolling up to that precipice. You need 3 people, pushing that. You can do it with one, but man, that thing's coming back at you, and you're definitely not going to climb out it as much, which is what happens. And you fucking just beat your self to shit over and over and over again. Yeah. You got shin splints. You got, you got trauma to the bones. Your feet are breaking down. Like, guess what? You're not going to actually realize the total peak that you can and lever that up to the next fucking level. That's why it's important.
There's some really funny videos out there of like, someone will watch like a David Goggins video of, you don't know me. He's doing his like chest presses. And then it cuts to the person thinking like, I could do that. And then it's like videos of people trying to be David Goggins, where he's like this like superhuman dude. And it's like, people are thinking, I could do that. I think that's a little bit of a problem with that, because most people will get out there and try to do that stuff. And it's just like, no, man, it's like most people are going to give up at like David Goggins stage 1, right? And then
you just can't jump there, like this is the basic human physiology. You don't walk into a gym and go, I've never squatted before. I think I'm going to hit 225 for 50 reps. Like,
now Goggins might be able to do that, like a superhuman person, maybe.
Well,
but like very unique.
Everyone's got a different baseline level of capacity to start with, right? So some people actually could, but I use that example to try to be like, in a realistic territory for most people, right? And that becomes unrealistic, right? Yeah. But everybody should be able to, get to that. You could get to that as your goal, right? If you follow this process, you do that, you're going to beat the fucking shit. You're not going to you're not going to hit the peak. Like we took the plunge and it went past, like I said, you have a baseline level of capacity. You fell through the floor and you can't rebound all the way up. And this is what we call trauma, right? So those are the experiences some people have that, like, yeah, you can still leverage it, just like I've leveraged, my experiences in my life to go up. But there's like, you don't have to experience, this is my antithesis to the Goggins, right? You don't have to experience that level of fucking beat your shit up to spring back out. What we want to do is manage it so that it's around that level of what our capacity is. Maybe we go a little past it. Maybe we undersell it a little bit. Either way, but this is how we realize elite performance in any level. And this is how learning to do that yourself and bring that out of other people. And they may not need to know what you're doing, but that's how I've changed people's lives. It's like forcing them into a challenge that they didn't think. They're like, I don't know if I can fucking pull that off. I don't know if I can take that project. I don't know. And they come out the other side, and it's like, fuck, I got more. Damn, I got more in me than I thought, right? And then next thing you know, and it's just like it starts. And that's actually how I did. This is literally how I changed, organizations. It wasn't the fancy business strategy. Sure, I had a lot of, some of the stuff that we just talked about is actually from a philosophy around Hoshin Kanri out of Japan. It's policy deployment is, I guess, the best term, that they have. And it's basically a PDCA cycle, and a lot of, it's like, we dove into that and all the, but at the end of the day, it's the everything, any change, be it individually or organizationally, starts at a personal level.
There's a few things I want to ask if we're talking about human nature. One of the things that I'm curious about is how, as humans, we want a shortcut, and we want immediate results, and we want to run away from pain. Like so, for for me, one of the things that was really difficult, and I do have a lot of self discipline. I'm internally referential. I do the thing of like I don't spill energy externally talking about my goals. I keep them very close and I hunt them down methodically, but I still have trouble staying above 80% compliant to the protocols that I've committed to because it gets fucking boring. And I hate to, like, once I'm on day 7 of eating my prepped meals, I want to fucking quit. I want to throw it at the wall. I want to feed it to my dogs. So is there something there? Because I know the instinct usually, I think, is to reach for a supplement or some kind of magical pill, or maybe even some think about, like, I'm just gonna get on gear and fucking get through this. Like, is there something that can help us, like, recenter and re-engage with our goals in a better way than that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a tough one. I mean, if you go talk to a lot of elite, athletes, and it's like, yeah, I want to be this. This is what I have to do, right? And so it's like, does that align with the way that you want to live? And that's a question for you and you alone, right? And that's where it needs to fit your lifestyle, because what you're doing and what's involved with that level of discipline, there's no right or wrong answer to anything, right? I'm not saying to go to like do that you should do all that. I don't know, right? That really comes down to you, because there's so many other things going in your life that you could be, like you said, this is just a component, right? But the question around what do you do? There's a phrase that you said right there at the beginning around how do you know? And so, like, if you're at the precipice and what choice you need to make, you need to learn the signals that this is a growth opportunity for me, or it's not. It's just, an annoyance, right? So, and that is, are you experiencing the twisting in your gut, like this mixture of like anxiety and fear mixed with maybe excitement on the other end, like the prospect of, do I go try to find a new job? Do I go back to school? Do I start my own business? Do I ask this woman to marry me? Do I go over to that table and, try to start a chat with somebody that like all these things, you're going to feel that in you. And that means I am on the precipice. Is this something that is going to be valuable for me or not? I don't know. But it gives you the experience of practicing this, knowing that, shit, I've got a hard conversation with an employee, a coworker, my wife, whatever it is, right? And going, I feel that. And what's the natural feeling? This is what brought me to this, is like, I want to avoid it. I want to turn away from it. And so you need to learn the practice of recognizing that trigger and going, this is the time, this is where I'm at, right? Okay, it's time to see if, am I going to push that ball over that precipice or not? Am I going to learn and grow from this? I can't guarantee that thing is going to work out. That's the unknown. I don't know what's going to come out the other side. All I know that's going to come out the other side is I will be a little stronger. The business endeavor might fail. The girl might not give me her number. The 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 job change might not be the best, and I've got to do it again because it was just, I found the wrong fit. But it was more, you're going to come out the end stronger. I
Yeah.
do know that.
So it's
Right.
capacity building. It sounds like we're applying the idea of progressive overload to like a philosophy of the self as you move through the world.
100%. Because what does this look?
Okay.
I mean, this is basic human physiology. Like I said, I can say this is, my thoughts on the subject, but in my 6Ps MBS model, like maybe like, I created those, but at the end of the day, that's it. And you track any cycle over, and it's like, this is, the growth cycle. It looks like that for a reason. It doesn't do this, right?
Yep.
And so that's the reality. You can call it whatever you want, and people can breed it other names, but I use the exact same principle that you would use. Yes. And
Yeah.
overload, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you start to approach what you previously perceived were your limitations. And maybe you realize that that's bullshit, that you had told a story in your mind that was your limitation. And then you just push
Yeah.
through. That's my experience, physically and otherwise, in life. And I wish that people would open themselves up to those experiences, because it's like a complete like shattering of a worldview that's actually very, not just limiting, but like depressive, suppressive. Like people living small lives in their own cages. It seems like, and I think that there's a lot there. Do you see any utility in identity there? Like if people build the identity of being a strength athlete, or a writer or something like that, do you see utility in kind of in that aspect of the self?
I haven't really thought about it in any utility standpoint. I think that it's actually a dangerous thing. And I think that that's where we get back to my analogy of people that create their goals. Like an athlete may fall into their identity,
Mm-hmm.
because we may, any of those things that our identity may get pulled from us, right? And understanding that I'm a, I express what I do through writing. I'm not a power lifter. I do powerlifting.
Right.
Powerlifting is one of the many ways that I express, who I am, what I feel is important, and how I want to challenge myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, yeah, okay, fair enough. I think that there's a lot of I'm getting stuck in some metaphors too, because you talked about kind of cutting away the excess things in life, and that definitely also connects with one of my favorite writers, Ursula Le Guin, once said of writing and editing that a work is finished not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. So there's these concepts, as you said, like overlapping each other, and sort of like building this way of approaching life, and building oneself up, that I think absolutely translate across categories of identity, insofar as we build personas that deal
Yep.
with like work or whatever.
You really starts creating in boxes, and sometimes that drives you to the point where you're like, oh, if I lose this, I'm losing myself. And so and that's where I'm trying to distill things down into again, maybe it's a too open in scope, but I'm trying to really distill this down much further. And that's hard to do. It's taken me a long time to take those thoughts and approaches of what I've actually used and how I've challenged people into what exactly am I doing from a systematic level then, and distilling that down to, having that impact to help you find yourself,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you weren't born with a writer stamp, right?
Yeah, yeah, true. You talked about building community. How important is it? And others have spoken also about surrounding oneself with people that have a similar value system, or like are driven towards goals. Now, one of the things I've discovered is having the amazing training partners that I do. It absolutely elevates not just my enjoyment of being in the gym, but like my life in general. So can we talk a little bit about that, about who you surround yourself with, community, training partners and business partners, etc., how you cultivate that?
Yeah. So I think that is the great benefit of figuring out how to express your values in the world, because people that are drawn to that, they're going to come, they're going to be connected, and it's going to suck them in like a magnet, right? So being open and having an authenticity around that can really help create that. Now, when it comes to creating community, I do think that there are a lot of missteps in trying to find like-minded people that people take, and you people often bring, especially when it comes to like a company or things like that, they'll create people that are maybe not drawn to the values as much as the charisma or the whatever it is about, you know about that person, and you're surrounded with people that become yes people. And just, again, like, and we see it in the hustle porn arena, like, fuck the haters, surround yourself. And it's like, you know what? Maybe some of those people aren't haters. Maybe some of those people are the best people to have around. Like, when I was dating my wife, we were in different countries, and, I would fly in every 2 weeks and spend 3-4 days with her for like a year. And she would travel with me. We were together all the time, but a lot of her close friends had never met me, right? And so, she announced that, oh, I'm having a baby and I'm moving to America, to her friends. And, oh, this is who he is. And they see this wild, freaking crazy guy drinking whiskey and doing deadlifts online. They're like, you're fucking stupid. Like, what the hell are you doing? And she comes to me, she's like, I can't believe my friends are not standing by me. And I'm like, those are some good friends. I'm like, those are some good friends. I'm like, yeah, they should challenge you. Like, they care for you. And so they're bringing questions, not to cut you down, not to be a hater, but, have you really, they're asking you, do you really understand this? Do you really know, and yeah, none of those friends think that about me, and, but anymore, like, that's like
Yeah,
it, but you've got to have people that want your best interest, and your best interest may be calling your fucking shit out,
absolutely,
right? Are you
absolutely.
really doing your choice there? Is that really aligned with what your principles, or are you, and so it can lead to some heated discussion. It can lead to things that, and that's why you need to master being able to be in conflict, be able to have the self-awareness too, to go, why am I feeling this way about that person's response? Because it's not that they're trying to hurt me or anything. And why am I, why am I experiencing whatever I am from that? There's a lot of components to that. So it's really interesting in building community, because there is so many, and I've seen it executed so wrong, where people build this thing and it's just people, worshiping what that, and that becomes a cult, right? The
Oh yeah,
person, the thing,
yeah,
the idol, wherever. And no matter what happens, they're like, yes, yes, yes.
yeah,
And you end up in some scary places. And
for
you may
sure.
walk down because you think like, oh yeah, I'm heading the right direction. Everybody around me is like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And you move down this path that you would have never maybe even gone down, but nobody's challenging you to step back and evaluate, how does that tie into those things?
Yeah,
So I think that there's, yeah, a couple pretty important components there.
Yeah, I think that there's what comes up for me as you were speaking is it's so difficult when you have, especially when you have a mentor that you respect and whose good opinion means something, of you means something to you. It's hard when they see your faults or your sort of like the aspects of you that maybe you're even trying to hide. So like, I think that I agree. It's very scary if you're just in an echo chamber. And the among women especially, sometimes we cultivate a pack where we're like, right or wrong, I'm with you, sis, and
Yep.
that can be bad, even though the difficult conversation that's necessary is sometimes some form of, I really see you and I really care about you, and so I'm going to tell you what I really see, and maybe challenge you a little bit. Do you think it's possible to build that among peers, or do you think that it's useful to go outside to hire a coach or to enter a formal mentorship relationship with someone? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there's value in both. And you should, if you want to have the right people around you, you need to be delivering to them as well. And so that means you need to challenge them when it's, you need to challenge going, I think, and it's not like a simple conversation like this, but like, I, I see more out of you. I see, you know, I think your potential is much higher, because you want to realize your best self. You should want that to realize that from other. And that's not all just, yes, yes comments, right? Now, where a mentor can come on is really being a direct guide in that process for yourself, and also hopefully adding the tools necessary, because you may not necessarily have all those components and can't rely on that within it. So I think both is best, right? And if that, yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. I think I've had some excellent coaches, and I've ended up like kind of assimilating some of the things, some of the ways that they've gone about coaching me, and engaging in self coaching afterwards. So I think if people are put off by the idea, like, oh, I'm going to be paying this person hundreds of dollars a month for the rest of my life to or no, the idea is not
No.
that, right?
Yeah. And so that is definitely, so a good coach should always be able to get you to a point where you don't need them anymore. Now, that doesn't mean your choice to still continue to engage or not. But just like, you don't want to go to a doctor and you go in and they go, okay, here's this. Now I need you to sign up and pay for the next 8 sessions, because that's what it's going to get. Like, their goal should be able to get you out of pain and back day one. And if that doesn't happen, here's a plan, work on that, come back and we'll hit it again. If you made progress, plan, like right back to the same process we just talked about, and we'll review that again. But their desire should be to not see you again. Right. And so, yeah. And I say that, I mean, that's what we do here at Kabuki on, the physical performance side. And like I said, we coach a lot of people, and we do have clients that last for years and years, and that's their choice as well. But we don't hide our approach or anything of that nature. And we teach people how to be coaches, and if that's the choice that you want to go on, you could learn enough to go and do the level of talent and coaching that we do. And I just recently launched a mentorship. Actually, yesterday was our first session, where I went through, the overall framework of, one, the 6 Ps, the MBS, but then also how that's going to integrate into the tools that are used for those other areas as well. And, I, people should graduate, right? And, but there's also a value in maintaining. Is the value proposition worth it, right? So you're going to be
Yeah.
maybe 2-3 years in, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'm getting some good nuggets here and there, and I'll, that is a value for me. This is a good time, and I think that one of the things, so like for me, I've been coached by my team since 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, and I continue to do that because for me, there's an incredible value in the coach mentee relationship, on a go forward, because it gives you the opportunity and space to kind of sit back and have that introspective time and have a voice to speak that to, particularly if we're talking personal development things beyond just like your partner or close friends who, they shouldn't have to bear the burden necessarily of all the challenges that you're going through at that level. And, that is a bit much to ask of your community, in my opinion. Right. So, and that's where those value comes in, maybe they're no longer teaching, but you're spending that time and they're helping, and it's pulling more out of you than you would, on your own.
Yeah,
And
there's many.
gives you that space.
Yeah, and I find that programs that where you graduate, you feel not a sense of mastery, but maybe a sense of completeness in that moment. But knowledge always continues to evolve, and so I like just a commitment to lifelong learning, also, right?
It's an ongoing discussion, in my opinion.
Agree.
So,
Agree.
I can take the things that I have and break those down into courseworks, but there's certain subsets of like walking through, that development process. That's an ongoing discussion all the time. I'm having that discussion with myself all the time. I'm learning from it all the time. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's ever evolving.
Yeah. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about while we have you for a few more minutes is so given that we're almost into late January, many people by now will have given up on their New Year's resolutions or will be feeling that pulled towards like, oh shit, I've got better things to do. I don't know. How do we recover from setbacks? How do we re-engage with our goals? Do we take some time to look at lessons learned from these failures, or do we just forgive ourselves and it's a brand new day? Talk a bit about that, please.
Yeah. I think that is the value of what I'm trying to bring with the 6 Ps, is helping people recognize where they're at in the process and realizing what they think is failure or any of that may not be the case. And that may be just where they're at in the process. And so it allows you the time, once you understand that, or maybe I cut that short, I'm going to dive in again. That's okay. So having that framework, I think, creates great power if we understand it.
Wonderful, beautiful. And again, it makes me think of the metaphor of physical development and like having your feet under you properly and rooting in. And there's a lot there. There's so much to talk about, and I just want to thank you for sharing your work and your time with us. And just wanted to open it up. Is there anything else that you wanted to let us know about or put out there?
Yeah. So, well, I'll just add a little bit more on that, and then I'll answer that. But
Yeah.
it's so easy to let like a misstep in the wrong direction make you think I've failed, and then you go even further. Like, here's my diet, here's my plan, and you know what? I freaking ate like crap for breakfast and then lunch, and like, just fuck it, it's out the window. No, like, I just got to restart. I just got to re-engage now. That happens, right? I missed 2 workouts last week or whatever it is. Like, no, like you can, it's not the end of the day at the end of, because everything that we do is cumulative over time. This is not NASCAR at 200 miles an hour. This is human development, both the physical, the mental, everything as it relates to this is measured. You need to, we'll take a further step back. Underestimate what you can accomplish in the short term. Okay. Overestimate what you can accomplish 5 years, 10 years from now. Right. Are the steps that I can do right now, those 2 meals, those 2 workouts, whatever it is, that's in the past. What is my step now? Is it going to be towards that North Star? Is it going to be towards the things in the way that I want to live? Is it going to be towards that development cycle? All right. So that's what we try to do every day, is move in the right direction. You're not going to accomplish the goal or lose the goal. by that myself. So, yeah, anything else? I would encourage people again to check out my book. You can actually get the audiobook for free through my website, chrisduffin.com. It's a partnership with Audible. If you sign up through there, I'll probably get
Yeah.
some kickback somewhere. And I also am really, really excited. I did just launch a mentorship program because of all the things that I've done in my life, and I've done a lot of very powerful things to help people and goals and all sorts of things that you could speak to. But the undermining of what has made me successful in so many fronts is around the processes with my approach to life and philosophy. And so I'm really excited for this mentorship, but that's also the most rewarding thing. It's an epiphany I had about 6 months ago. I was laying in bed with my wife as we wrap up every day talking about things. And I'm like, I need to make a move and spend more time with this. Like, I do it with my executives, and I do it with like my past, because they'll move on and continue and reach out for me for advice. I've done it with athletes. I'm like, that is the nugget that just like excites the hell out of me. And it's a little bit harder to reference than go, oh, here's my, my design awards and innovation and record. There's a Guinness one behind me. Like, I get more enjoyment out of having a conversation and getting that build up and having somebody just motivated, pumped, and going out, and they end up launching their business or whatever it is, and they come back and we're continuing the conversation, and just like seeing that process and seeing someone accomplish like more than that they thought possible, and being a major component of it in both providing the tools internally and externally. I mean, like, I fucking love it. Like, that is me in an essence. And I think anybody, I'm launching this now, and I think anybody that maybe watches my stuff would probably, oh yeah, that's a fucking like natural fit. Like, that's where my passion really resides, and that's where my successes have come out of. And so my point is, like, I feel that's actually my area of my highest level of competency, even though I'm mostly all awarded and recognized everywhere else. Right.
Yeah.
So
It seems a very natural phase for you to enter into at this stage in life, honestly. Like, it seems very much the right thing at the right time for you and your brand, which I cannot overstate how much respect and regard I have for both. And I really want all of that to come to a greater audience and for people to engage with that substantially, because I think it's amazing.
And so, yeah, if anybody, we make the Kabuki Strength and make the best biomechanically sound products in the world, used by every Major League Baseball team, 70-80% of the NFL, NBA, every branch of the military, in the White House, next to the Oval Office, you name it in sports performance, we're there. Tons of elite rehab facilities on the clinical side. And then what we're doing with barefoot shoes is just really, really amazing. And I don't think there's anybody else in the market that's doing what we're doing as far as both design, aesthetic, education, and the performance of actually creating something that really allows you to develop the strength and control of that foot and ankle complex, and not make you look like, like you smell like patchouli oil at the same time. So,
Totally.
So
I love your stuff, and your shoes are awesome. I'm about to order some because the Globo gym that I go to, one of the two, won't allow me to go barefoot. So yeah, I'm about
which
to
is the output of the
get
brand. I was doing and preaching this stuff for like 6 years, and I keep getting these questions, and they're like, "What shoes do you recommend?" I'm like, "Oh, none of them." They're like, "Well, we don't all own our own gym, And so it's like, okay, I guess I'll I'll work on that. And ended up pairing with some amazing folks. My the guy I design work with on a design front, it's the ultimate in form of function first meets a touch of fashion. So, I mentioned like one of my customers is Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, LeBron, like some of the sports, big sports stars. Well, if you look at some of those figures, you'll see them wearing some like custom one-off like boots or shoes as well, $10,000, $15,000 for a pair. So arguably the most renowned men's fashion designer in the world, or actually he does tons, actually all the fucking movie stars. Oh my God, you should see when I go there, the names on the outgoing shipments is freaking insane. Like you're like, what? Are you outfitting the Oscars? Is this a shipment? I don't know. Like it's, yeah. But his name is George Esquivel. And it's like, it's the balance of fucking extremes, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep. For real.
I mean, like,
For real. No, they're really nice. So
so
set the trend at your local gym, ladies and gentlemen, and be the first because
yeah,
it's
if it's
good
not a
gear.
thing yet, it will be. So
Yeah, yeah. So on that, philosopher, gentleman, scientist, Guinness World Record holder, author, and amazing human, Chris Duffin, thank you so much, and goodbye for now.
all right, thank you.